Alright everyone, today is a good day in Vermont and New Hampshire, so New England is cleaning up its act and preparing, I think, to wage a drug war against addiction that's more proper as opposed to simply, hurling everybody in prison for having a joint and shit like that. Marijuana should be legalized recreationally nationwide. I do support that. I don't have a problem with people smoking weed, just don't do it around me. It's like people offer, oh man, I'll smoke you out. I haven't done that in half a decade, and I'm not going to do it again. I have no interest in it. I've got too much work to do to get high at this point. Have a beer, okay. Yeah, I realize that impairs you even more, but it's gonna make working more enjoyable. Weed just makes me, anxious and tired anyway. Why the fuck would I want to smoke it? But other people should be able to smoke it, and I support that ability of theirs. I don't support the drug war. I don't think the federal or even any state government has any right whatsoever to prohibit these things. Prohibition does not work. That extends to the psychedelics and other sort of mid-level psychotropics. Those should be at least decriminalized. If someone, they have a couple tabs of acid, okay, they're not a drug dealer, they're just an acid head. Let them take their acid. If you find them with it, if they're impaired, they're out in public wandering around talking to trees, that's a different story. DUI, obviously, it could be an aggravating factor in crime, but if somebody's in the privacy of their own home, they want to take some mushrooms, I don't care. Doesn't affect me, doesn't affect society, it's not probably doing them long-term harm. Most scientific literature suggests there is no long-term harm from many of these substances. Many of them aren't even addictive. Weed is not particularly addictive on a chemical level. It can become habituating. People become reliant upon it because, they feel under the weather, they feel depressed, they do it to deal with stress or something. But is that any different from people who eat chocolate to do that? No, I don't think so. So the Vermont House has actually voted to legalize marijuana. It's going to get through the Senate as well. So it's probably going to be legal here fairly soon. And it allows people as well to grow a few plants for their own use. Not just possess it once it's been, you get the actual weed. Prior to now, we've had decriminalized recreational marijuana, which means you can't grow it. Although, is anyone really going to do butt fuck about it if you get one fucking plant? No. The police in Vermont generally aren't going to care if you do. They might confiscate it, they might fine you. There's a lot of discretion involved, and they've done a good job generally with that discretion. And the same is true of some certain, of the psychedelics and so forth. But up until now, if you had up to an ounce of marijuana, it was basically a fine or a slap on the wrist and confiscation. They didn't really harass people for it. You'd have to have that weed and be driving down the road, smoking yourself out and clam baking your car in order to actually have any problem with the police in this state up until now. Now, though, it will be fully legal, as in there's no fine, there's no confiscation for small amounts. You can grow a couple of plants for your own use. Larger grows would need a permitting system, which, by the way, is fine. I do like, however, how in this state, in order to grow, if it's just a few plants for your own use or, you're smoking out your friends, you don't have to get a permit for that. It's going to become fully legal. Now, Phil Scott, who is a Republican, but who immediately sided with the Democrats on a slew of issues, and a lot of people got fucked out about that, he says he'll take a look at it and consider it. He's not completely on board. I think he'll end up bowing to pressure, though, because support for legalizing marijuana is high anyway in the United States. It's even higher in Vermont. It's probably upwards of 75%. Some of the people claiming that they're against it, they're only saying that to keep up appearances. Trust me, I live in Vermont. I know the people around this state. There are some people who say that they're not for it, and they don't fucking care. They probably smoke it themselves. They just don't want to be they're projecting, literally. I know people like this. I support it fully. As for New Hampshire, their Senate has just voted to decriminalize marijuana, move to a system like we've been using, which has generally worked. It already got through their House with flying colors. Now the Senate has voted in favor. Now the governor there has said he will sign that. So New Hampshire will have decriminalized marijuana. Small amounts for personal use will no longer be considered a crime. Again, it's basically just DUI or public intoxication. And does anyone care if you're high in public? No. My thoughts on it are this. From a moral level, It is, I hate to sound like a hippie here, it is literally just a plant. It just happens to be psychotropic, and not even significantly so. You're going to have to smoke quite a bit of weed to really do yourself in. It's got to be some really good stuff if you're only smoking, you know, a quarter ounce and getting totally blitzed off of it. You know, I've had some, I've smoked marijuana in the past, and I've smoked the really cheap, you know, $20 for a slice sort of street weed, and I've smoked the really, really high-grade college stuff that you get at a place like UVM. I've also smoked synthetic cannabinoids, which are shit, and you shouldn't bother doing them. Hopefully this cleans up the synthetic problem. Now that pot will be legal here and decriminalized in New Hampshire, hopefully people won't have to smoke the spice crap that can cause all sorts of fucking problems. There have been people, they get like, permanent psychosis or brain damage from something like that. I'm lucky to have escaped long-term repercussions. As far as I know, maybe I got a heart valve now that's faulty and it's going to kill me 10 years from now. I wouldn't even have a fucking clue. All because of the drug war. It's a bunch of retardation. They should decriminalize the psychedelics too. So people turn to synthetics on that too. Yeah, develop some new synthetic counterpart to psilocin or something like that. Oh, take this. It's legal shrooms. And then people take it, and of course it turns out it's like flakka or ivory mist or something like that, and zombifies people, makes them eat parts of their own face, like they're super high on methamphetamine or something like that. Drug war is an abysmal failure. It hasn't worked. We've been waging it for decades. Addiction rates haven't gone down. Usage rates haven't gone down. If anything, you just have more societal problems and a hell of a lot more people in prison. This is going to save the state of Vermont so much money. Because in the past, you go back a decade or so before decriminalization, we're throwing a bunch of people in prison. Yeah, maybe for only short times, but we're throwing them in jail or in prison for simple possession of marijuana or other narcotics. It clutters up the prison system. And some of these people end up, because they now, you know, they've got it on their record, they can't get a job as easily. They end up on assistance, or they end up down and out, they end up homeless, or they end up involved in other crime, like property crime especially, in some parts of Vermont. It's not necessary, it doesn't work. The drug war has failed. We have to change strategies. Now, whether you go more hardline and say, okay, we're going to start executing people for smoking marijuana, you know, you go full Duterte, or whether you go the other route, which I prefer, which is, well, you know, obviously there's demand for the product. We're just creating a black market anyway, and we're propping up cartels. No amount of penalty is going to stop it completely. Why do we even bother waging the drug war? Let's just pull back on it and at least let people have their weed and I would say simple possession of psychedelics. You know, hard drugs get people into treatment. Get them addiction treatment. It'll work better. There are methods that are capable of, even if you have to put them through treatment 4 or 5 times before they get clean, it's still cheaper than imprisoning them for a year. That's how expensive the prison system has become. We, the taxpayers, from a fiscal side, this would be the argument to the conservative so-called. From a fiscal side, you're telling the taxpayers that they need to pay, what, $30,000, $40,000 a year to keep someone in prison, in order for them to just be slave labor for some fucking multinational corporation that happens to own a bunch of prisons. It's retarded. The taxpayers are funding that. You say, oh yeah, but slave labor, we're making money, that's great. Yeah, the problem is it's not going to the taxpayers, it's not going to anybody. Our taxes go up. So it's dumb from a fiscal standpoint, from a moral standpoint, and just a pragmatic standpoint. We look at the drug war and it hasn't worked. So I strongly support legalizing marijuana. I strongly support decriminalizing the psychotropics of the world. You know, mushrooms, LSD, I don't really care what it is. It doesn't matter. I took most of these anyway. I'm just fine. The only thing that ever screwed me up was legal when I took it. So the drug war's failure is not lost on me. I got to witness it firsthand. These other substances did me no long-term harm. I sit here, I'm perfectly able to talk coherently. I'm perfectly able to reason my way through things. I'm perfectly able to lay waste to somebody like Nate Silver when it comes to political analysis. And yet I did all sorts of drugs when I was in college. I'm doing drugs right now. Spoon clank time means drug time. It just happens to be a drug that's legal. Of course I'm addicted to it. Oh, you see me without coffee in the morning. You wouldn't like what you see. You wouldn't be seeing this level of speech. you'd be seeing mumble mumble falls back asleep, essentially. Yeah, I'm addicted to coffee. I love it. Chocolate's addictive. Cheese has chemicals in it that mimic opioids in your brain. We don't see anyone clamoring to, well, we're going to ban cheese. We're going to become a vegan society. We're going to ban coffee and tea, because it has caffeine in it too. No, you're going to have to drink just water from now on. What a boring society it would be. I don't care if someone wants to smoke weed every day, man. Smoke 2 joints in the morning, man. 420 all day, man. It's always 420 somewhere. There are people who drink that way. There are people that are total drunks. They drink can after can after can all day. They chain smoke like 5 packs of cigarettes. That's illegal for them to do. They're a hell of a lot worse off than somebody who chooses to smoke a bong once in a while. And the so-called health risks of pot, which are tenuous at best, by the way. So, look at the health risks of other perfectly legal substances. You drink enough coffee, yeah, you can fuck around with your own heart. You can end up with heart failure. You smoke cigarettes, yeah, you can stroke out. You can have a heart attack. You drink too much alcohol, yeah, you can get cirrhosis of the liver. Or some other problem. You can get acute alcohol poisoning, pass out and die on your floor. And all these things are perfectly legal. If either lethality or addiction is the primary question within the drug war of the DEA's own federal drug guidelines as far as scheduling goes, marijuana shouldn't even be scheduled. It should be perfect. They shouldn't even regulate it. It should be seen as just another innocuous, invasive weed or something like that. Weed, literally. Under their own scheduling system. The fact that it remains atop the schedule is totally fucking retarded. It doesn't make any sense. Half the psychedelics shouldn't even be scheduled under the principles that they're using. Of course they've got medical applications. They've been openly tested in other countries and found to work for some of these things. Ecstasy can help with depression. Magic mushrooms can help with depression and PTSD. Marijuana can help with both of those things. It can also help you with glaucoma. It can help as a pain reliever that's not addictive for cancer patients, for people getting treated for AIDS and things like that. Help their appetite. It works. It has medical applications. Why the hell is it still banned? So thankfully, the state of Vermont has said, fuck them. Fuck the federal government, states' rights mode. New Hampshire's been doing that since inception. I'm not surprised the only surprise here for me is that Vermont's actually legalizing it and New Hampshire's just barely getting around to decriminalizing the shit. Now, of course, there's discretion too. Anywhere, even if you go to the most anti-pot states, tell you what, there are going to be cops that are smoking weed, sort of hide it under wraps, and they're not going to prosecute. If you've got a joint, they're not going to throw you in jail for that. Yeah, there are actually police officers out there who don't fucking care. They realize that it's not the scourge that other people think that it is. I know they get a bad rap. By the way, all the police unions should be clamoring for legalization. Why the hell do you want to have to get suited up in Kevlar at midnight and bust down somebody's door because somebody smelled marijuana? Isn't that a fucking waste of your time? Shouldn't you be out, actually, when you get called out, shouldn't it be assumed that it's a dangerous situation in which you're not going to get flack for shooting somebody with a taser? Like, you bust into someone's home just because weed was smelled or something. Throw a flashbang through the window. They had a case. Flashbang gets thrown through the window because someone was reporting drug use. It lands in the crib of a fucking toddler, disfigures them for life. The police union has to drag the family through court and totally lambaste them. Turned out there wasn't even any illegal activity going on. This is the sort of public relations nightmare that the police have to deal with because of inept policies built by politicians. Half of them have never smoked weed. The other half are hypocrites, have smoked weed, and still want to see it banned. It's useless. The drug war has completely collapsed in on itself. Vermont has become now, once Phil Scott probably signs this legislation, the first state to use the legislature to legalize marijuana. By the way, that eerily represents and resembles our actions in gay marriage. We were also the first state to legalize that via legislative action as opposed to judicial action. In a lot of these states that have legalized pot, it's a ballot initiative. It's not the legislature. We're the first one to take legislative action on this issue. So chalk up another first for Vermont. Yeah, I don't like the fact that this state is high tax, Fucking sucks as far as jobs go. Fucking sucks as far as weather goes. Fucking sucks as far as, Phil Scott's generally a moron, honestly, and I had to vote for the cretin. And you look at who he was running against, you can see why. There are a lot of fucking problems in this state. We got an aging population, the youth all moves out, there's no jobs, high taxes, it's a bunch of socialists. We have to deal with idiot Bernie Sanders being like the representative of our state. People think of Vermont, they think of Bernie Sanders eating a tub of Ben & Jerry's. That's a problem for our image, I think, with a lot of people in the country. We look further left than California. It's constantly snowy and cold here. In summer, it's half the time it's fucking rainy. But at least we got common sense on a few issues. Okay, there are a few saving graces to our state. That's about all. Peace out.